So yeah, this is a talk about higher intelligence, some strategies to help you guys grow your companies. I always like to start off just by saying who I am. So this is me. I'm the founder and director of Mighty Kingdom. We started back in 2010, so we've been doing it for a little while now. And yeah, that's my Twitter handle there. You can tweet me if you need. So the last couple of years I've been at GCAP doing a couple of talks around why the industry needs to get bigger, and how scaling your company up can actually help you reduce risk by sort of spreading around that, putting your eggs in multiple baskets. But what I kind of found is that after each of these talks, people come up to me and they'd always ask me, like, how do I actually do this? How do I actually grow my company? And what they're really, when I dig into it, they're saying, like, how do I hire people? This is actually, a bit of a challenge for a lot of companies as they sort of look to grow. But what they really want to know is, how do I hire the right people? Because there's a fear that if you get that wrong, you can bring people into your organization that can actually destroy value rather than create it. So ultimately what they're saying is, how do I not screw up my company? This is a question I struggle with every day. But yeah, so at Mighty Kingdom, I'll give you a brief overview of our journey. And this is sort of looking at our employees over time. Look at this curve. Everyone loves a hockey stick. This is ours. We founded back in 2010. There was just 2 of us. We were game industry veterans, but we were focusing on the app space. It took us a little while to come around to game dev as a strategy. So it was in 2013 that we decided to switch to game dev purely. We were 4 people at that point. We were quite lucky to work with Disney and pick up a license for a toy brand called Shopkins, and that sort of fueled our growth through 14, 15, into 16, and now we've picked up Lego as a client and we're working on some original IP, and now we're up to, I think, 48 or 49 is our current headcount. And we have some big plans. We want to go bang, zoom, straight to the moon. We want to get up out there. So I think one thing you can take from all of this is that we've hired a lot of people. We learned a lot about that process over time. What the strategies that we used when we were 4 people are a lot different to the strategies that we use today. And so what I'd like you to do is sort of go through, and I'll take you through that journey of how we grew from 4 to 40, or there you go, 4 going on 40. So it's the alternate title of my talk, but I thought it might be a bit too niche. So yeah, there are particular challenges that arise at different scales as you're hiring. But there are certain things that are sort of true at any scale. One of them is to actually sit back and understand why you're doing this. Why do you want to grow? What is the purpose of your company? Is this like a hobby for you? Is this something you do on the side of another thing? Is this going to be all-consuming for you? What kind of games are you making? Are you making small games? Are you making big games? If you can understand the vision of what you're trying to do, that'll help define what sort of company you need to be able to execute that vision. For us, our goal is to become ultimately an entertainment company. So for us, it's not just about making games, it's about making brands. We think about what we do through that lens of entertainment, and that means that we know we have to scale. One of our goals, as you might hear it parroted around from all the Mighty Kingdom people, is to be bigger than Disney, which is a pretty lofty goal. But to do that, it means that we have to invest and grow. And so that's why growth and scale has been a very important part of our strategy from the start. Another thing that you should do as a sort of the founder of a company or when you're small is actually just know yourself. Understand what your motivations are. Are you in this to make money? Are you in this to get fame or notoriety? Or is this just an itch that you're trying to scratch? Understand what your motivations are, because that'll help you determine where you fit within this company that you're building. You're going to be building a company is a long slog. I've been doing this for 8 years now. You have to be excited to get up every day and come out and do it. And so you need to take the time to sit down regularly and make sure that you're doing these things, that you're knowing yourself, understanding your business, and making sure that those interests are still aligned. So I guess you could kind of summarize this as, you need to have a vision of where you want to be, and you have a plan to get there. Now this vision and plan will change over time, and you should revisit this as you sort of learn more things about yourself, about your company, about the industry. But it's also, it gives you some something to measure yourself against, which I think is another good thing to do. If you have a vision of what your company to be, you can sit back at any point and look back and say, how close are we to that? Are we getting closer? Are we getting further away? That way you can sort of adjust your strategies, adjust what you do to sort of make sure that you are heading in the right direction. And it also helps sort of remove the confusion with the other people on your team. If they're all bought into that same vision, if you communicate this effectively, then you know that everyone is filtering everything they do through that lens and we're all sort of going in the right way. So, you all done this planning, right? That's what we all do. And you get to your first hire. We all remember our first, and this is mine. It's the first guy I ever hired. I didn't do any of that stuff before I hired this guy. We just found a guy who thought was cool, and we gave him a job. And we were actually pretty lucky. He's really clever. He's a very smart guy. He's now the CTO of a company in San Francisco with more than $7 million of revenue. And yeah, so we kind of knocked it out of the park the first time. But that was lucky. We didn't go in with a plan. So it took us a long time to find another Andrew Mackenzie Ross. That's who he is there. Also, my hair was way darker back then. It's a lot grayer now. So it took us a little while to refine that process and actually find good people. So this is us when we were 4. There we are. We didn't switch to being 100% game dev, as I say, until 2013. And these are the people that were there when I made that switch. In fact, they're still with us, all 3 of us. I'm one of them, so I'm still here, obviously. But we've made a lot of mistakes before we got to this point. Between 2010 to 13, our numbers have been up and down quite a lot. And so I thought a lot about what we got wrong in that process. The biggest thing that we did is we hired based on need. So the problem with this is that when you're looking at the things that you need, you overlook the things, other things that are red flags in that process. You know, it makes logical sense in your head. We have a project, we need a programmer, I'll go get a programmer. But if you're just looking at that outcome, you're just looking at the need that you're trying to fill, you're basically doing this. You're just panic hiring. You're just trying to win a project, hire a programmer, hire an artist, and just cross your fingers and hope it works. So what we tried to do is come up with some strategies that would help us protect ourselves from ourselves in the hiring process. There's a saying that a lot of people will say when it comes to hiring about you should hire slow and fire fast. I don't necessarily believe you should fire fast, but I think the general idea around that is you should take the time, you should be careful about the people that you're bringing into your company, and you should consider not just their skill set, but a lot of things around them and what else they bring. So, those bullet points didn't all come up one at a time, you get to read them all. So protecting yourself from yourself. These are the things that I've learned over the years. You should always be hiring. What that means is you should constantly be out there talking to people, interviewing, understanding what talent there is in your area and around, so that when you do come to a point where you need to make a hire, you actually have a pipeline of talent already there. There's obviously a lot of overhead in maintaining that. At Mighty Kingdom, we try and distribute that through the team, so it's not just one person's responsibility to maintain that list. But it is a cost. We try and make sure that everyone that's involved in that process, because ultimately everyone you bring into the team is going to be working within that team, and so they need to be a valuable member there. We always focus on long-term value. The way to think about this is when you're hiring somebody, usually, you're entering into a relationship where you're going to be with them for 5, 10, 15 years, hopefully like an entire career. So you want to make sure that when you're evaluating a person, you're not thinking about who they are today, you're thinking about who they could be and what value they could bring to your organization over time. You should also use fixed-term contracts when you're small. This is the thing that saved our butt a lot of times, where we used to just hire to the length of our projects. This saved us when we had people who were in a great culture fit. It meant there's an actual endpoint and you can move on. Actually, I forgot to mention, I'm not a lawyer, so make sure you get a lawyer and get your contracts all sorted out. This isn't legal advice, this is just opinion, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to understand that if you're just using fixed-term contracts, there's a downside. It's really hard to retain good talent when you're only giving someone 3 months, 3-month contract in your company. So you have to, you're entering into a relationship with somebody where it has to be mutually beneficial. And if you're taking advantage of them by bringing control into your hands by giving them fixed terms, you need to give something back. Usually that's money, but there's other ways you can sort of reward people as well. One thing we sort of learned quite late as well, you need to enforce your probation period. This is something that we're still kind of we haven't got quite right perfectly yet. But the probation period is there. It's like a testing period for you and your employee to figure out whether you're a right match for each other. Because as much as you want someone to be working in your organization and contributing as a programmer, artist, whatever, they have to see value from your organization as well. It needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And the probation period is basically what that is. It's a test run. So at the start, when you hire somebody, set some expectations, where you're going to be in 3 months, what are the first things you're going to do? I'm looking at Tony because I didn't do this. But then look back at that after 3, after 6 months, and just check in and make sure that your interests are still aligned. And if it's not, that's okay. You can move on, but protect yourself in that way. So that got us from 4 to 15. And once we got, Marty just saw herself in there. Once you get past 10 people, things start to shift in your company as well. Before that time, we noticed that, I found that everyone could keep all the projects in their head. You didn't need to have a lot of overhead, a lot of management, and that sort of stuff. Everyone could just communicate. You weren't ever just shout across the room at somebody to get something done. Once we got past 10, once we got to 15, that started to crumble and fall apart, and so we had to get management. Now, if you've seen my talks before, I sort of resist this I like to keep things very, very flat. And so again, this comes back to having your plan and your vision for your company. Like for me, I always wanted the people who are on the tools making the decisions about the products and about where we go. So I tried to make sure that as we brought these people in, that they were supporting that process and not replacing that process. And one thing you'll need to do at this stage as well, if you're like me, I'm a programmer, I was a programmer. My license got revoked just recently, my Unity license. You need to step back from the tools. You need to look back, take a step away from the day-to-day grind and just look at your company from a sort of a high-level view. One thing I often say to people who are asking me how they make that transition from a smaller company to a mid-size is you don't have to be the boss. It's okay to step back and go, you know what, I love programming. That's what I'm going to do. I need to hire somebody who's going to do all the things I don't like. Just because you own the company doesn't mean you have to be the boss. Now, that's kind of funny for me to say because I am the boss. But for me, I realized that the sort of company I wanted to grow, there was no one I could import that could have the same vision and would sort of take it to that same place that I was aiming for. And so I knew that I had to be the one to take that responsibility on. So it meant that I started programming less and less, had more and more meetings. Yeah, that's a fun thing. No one tells you that when you start a game company, that you're going to spend 8 hours a day in meetings. But by having a plan and having a vision, those are conscious decisions you're making. They're not ones that are just sort of falling in your lap. If you don't have that plan, it's quite easy to just hire people and have your culture and have all these processes defined by other people. But if you go into it consciously with a plan, then you can actually design the company that you want. So the next question I will answer is, where do you actually find all these good people? Right? We've been pretty lucky in Mighty Kingdom. Our turnover is pretty low. I think we've lost 3 people in the last 3 years as we've grown. And so I thought I'd do a little bit of an analysis and look back at all the people at Mighty Kingdom when we were up to 25 and where they all came from. A couple of you are in the room. So, former colleagues. This is actually the first place that I go to when I'm looking to hire somebody. As I look around and see who I've worked with before, because they're a known quantity, they're often safer. It does come with a downside though, because often you work with them a long time ago, they're different people today, so you need to make sure that you're not, you don't have rose-tinted glasses on when it comes to, and interns and work experience, we partnered with university to find great talent. Yep, Blaze has just noticed there's an arrow over his head. Up until our last intern, which unfortunately broke our streak, we'd hired every single intern we'd ever had at Mighty Kingdom. And we are intending to hire the last one, we just haven't got there yet. But the most consistent place that we got talent in the early days was referrals. And these referrals came from people who were working at Mighty Kingdom, people outside Mighty Kingdom, people in our network. So, this was a very good process for us. They come pre-vetted, usually they've worked somewhere else, and you've got someone who knows them well. If you've been very good at articulating what your culture is in your studio, then the people who are referring you will know whether they're a good fit or not. And so, yeah, I'll give you a little summary about where to find good peeps. Former work colleagues, referrals, interns, work experience. These are all sort of really good and like good pathways. One thing you notice I won't say is recruiters. I've never had a successful experience with a recruiter. I don't know if that will change as we grow, as we start to look to get sort of more specialist hires. But yeah, it's never been one. They've never sort of really understood our industry. So networking. This is actually one that's become more and more important as we've grown. Going out to these events, talking to people, seeing who's out there, that gets you outside of your current network and gets you into other networks. That's what networking is, right? That's the whole point of it. And like conferences is another great place to find talent, right? You're here with a whole bunch of like-minded people who are really excited about this industry. This is a great place to find talent. And this is one of the reasons I like to send a big contingent from Mighty Kingdom out to GCAP and things like this, is that, it spreads your little fingers out. You've got more people talking to more people. It just increases the chances of finding that good talent. Is that a different colour? Adjacent industries. In Adelaide, we hire a lot from the visual effects space. We've got Rising Sun there. The crossover of skills is quite high between doing stuff for film and doing stuff for games, just at a sort of different quality level. And certainly when it comes to the management side, visual effects, they're really good at getting shit done on time and on budget. So leverage that, bring them into your organization and help them sort of bring your projects under control. And then the last place we look is like completely unrelated industries. So we're starting to look now for talent that's like, we build economies in our games around how how money comes in, money comes out, there's an economy there. Why don't we get an economist? Why don't we get someone who's actually an economics grad or student or master's to come in and actually design those things? At the moment, we're just game devs making this up as we go. But there's a lot of skill and a lot of talent out there that is relevant for our industry, but we're just not looking at it. And a lot of times we find that when we talk to these people, they get super excited about this kind of space, because for an economist, they don't get a chance to directly influence an economy. They're often just observing it. So when you say, do you want to come in here and design this? They're like, oh my God, yes. Like, I want to get in. So, we need to sort of expand our mind in terms of where we get talent from and what we think of as talent. All right, I'm going to grab a glass of water. All right, so this goes back to that planning process, right? You need to sit back and think about, what does your ideal workplace look like? And for me, you need to sort of articulate the values of your company. What is your company looking to reward? What does it punish? What are you trying to encourage or discourage? These are the sort of questions you need to ask as your company grows beyond that sort of 15, 20, 25, because you'll notice that culture becomes a really important part at that scale, even more so when you're small. It's easy to be small and scrappy, but as you get big, you need to start to articulate why your company is better than other companies, because you start to compete in a different space. At Mighty Kingdom, like I say, we aim for a sort of a flat culture that encourages autonomy, self-management, responsibility, those sorts of things. And so we want to make sure that the people we bring in are good communicators, they've got good interpersonal skills, they work well on a team. And at Mighty Kingdom, we look for candidates who are customer-focused. We try to be a very customer-focused organization. So we want to make sure that people coming in aren't driven by ego, right? Because ego can get in the way of that. So by understanding what my ideal workplace would look like, that helps you measure the candidates that are coming into your company, about how they look and how they would fit within that sort of ideal workplace. And when you think about how your workplace looks, I mean, like, what do the people in it look like? And which gets us to the slide that's in almost all of these talks, is diversity. And like at Mighty Kingdom, this is a very strong focus for us. And I'm not going to sort of relitigate diversity again, but other than to say that a diverse workforce outperforms a homogenous one. It's like everywhere. It's like the most, the big thing that everyone who looks in this space talks about. This means that there's actually like a business advantage to being diverse, because your company will perform better than another company. So this is like one of the rarest things in business, which is a win-win, and that it's good for business and it's good for society. It's like that never happens, right? They're normally like diametrically opposed. So like for us, I wanted to make sure that the demographics of Mighty Kingdom match the sort of demographics of the society that we're in, which is a pretty lofty goal. And it took us a while to get a process in place that helped us get closer to that. The channels that we've been looking for talent previously, if you know, I've been in the industry since 2005. When I worked at Chrome in Adelaide, when we were 50, we had one female in the studio. And yeah, poor old Sue, that was putting in a horrible experience for her. But it meant that when you are using former colleagues as your initial path for growth, for us, it just meant predominantly white male people, right? And we went through a process of like, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. But it's like, you know, once you have your eyes open to the value of diversity, you need to make sure that your processes and everything aren't sort of unnecessarily eliminating candidates. So when often I talk about this, people just come back to me and say, well, don't you just hire the best candidate? This is the classic response to any sort of diversity talk. Well, I think yes, in one sense, but what tools and what criteria are you evaluating that candidate as being the best? I think a lot of times people think that it just comes down to skill, and just because you're the most skilled doesn't mean you're the best candidate. Because do you hire someone who's an asshole just because they're a great programmer? I didn't look at you on purpose, Blaze. That was just an accident. but you know, like you need to make sure that you think about the entire value of that candidate. And one of the things we found is like even if you start looking at placing a value on those soft skills and the other skills, it was still quite hard to have those candidates, the diverse candidates, bubble up. And so we started to change the way that we evaluated skills, and we changed that to being evaluating potential. So I'll have a look at this as an example of two different people on their two different career paths. Let's just say one is the top guy, is like a white male guy. This candidate, right, he looks good on paper. And the next candidate below him looks like the least favorable candidate. But what you're doing is, the way they present to you today is just a snapshot in time of where they are in their career and what value that they bring. And if we go backwards in time, and to do this for us, it involved going and seeing where they were when they started their studies, talking to their lecturers, et cetera, we find that the candidate who'd been told his entire life that there's a place for him in this industry and that he could do this and blah, 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 they already come into a course or come into their career at a high level. Whereas a candidate who hasn't had that and came to it quite late is starting like right at the bottom. But like I said earlier, when you're hiring somebody, you're looking at a relationship that's going to last 5, 10, 15 years. So if you project forward what those lines are, I think this is no surprise to anyone, you'll see that the candidate which didn't look good today looks better in a year or in 2 years or 3 years. And these graphs are just linear, but we find that more often than not, it's actually exponential. Once you get someone who's got all the right fundamental skills and that in place, if you give them an environment that's supportive and helps them succeed, their career actually just sort of accelerates away from this line. So how to build a diverse company. These are actually kind of rules just for how to build a company, but let's have a look. Make sure you're advertising where diverse candidates are. Like it's easy to just go to LinkedIn and just go to you know, the same old places and Seek and whatnot, but we find overwhelmingly we just get the same kind of candidates from those places. You need to make sure that where you're advertising is actually reaching the people that you want to attract to your company. I mean, that's true of even if diversity isn't one of your goals, you just got to make sure that you're advertising in a place where you're getting talent that matches your criteria, not just the same old. One of the things we do is we always tend towards an interview. Like a CV is like just a snapshot of where someone is at this moment in time. It doesn't tell you where they're going to go or where they've come from in great detail. You need to sort of fill in those blanks yourself. But also, like, we hire an artist because they're a great artist, not because they're great at filling out CVs. Or we want a programmer who can program, not work in Word. So like CVs are often quite terrible ways of discovering who a person is. So we try to interview as many candidates as we can, which again places a lot of pressure on your hiring process. But a lot of people will represent much better in an interview environment than they will in a just on paper. And this is where, as the leader of a company, you can actually inject yourself into the process and make sure that candidates aren't falling out of the mix. The amount of times that I've sort of captain called people into an interview that have ended up as a hire, it's been a few. But yeah, so if you're looking for a way to make sure that, well, it's the next thing here, to overcome your biases, there are a lot of unconscious biases, right? Like there's a lot of research around how people will react differently to one CV to another just based on the name and a whole bunch of stuff like this. So there's a lot of tools and ways that you can, things that you can do to sort of get around that. But the first part is to just, hey Jeff, is to just understand that they exist, know what they are, and make sure that you're looking for ways to circumvent them. So when you're looking at a bunch of candidates that have been rejected from that first screening process, just run over it and say, like, what, are we unnecessarily rejecting candidates, based on sort of some of these biases and work around it. Like I said, we should focus on potential. Don't worry so much about their current skill set. You can make people better programmers. We can teach you how to program better. We can teach you we can improve you as an artist. We can improve you as a manager. But it's all those other skills around you that are more valuable. So we put a high value on this at Mighty Kingdom because it's, game development is a very collaborative process. So you want to make sure that these people are able to work in that environment. And this is the one that we had to learn. No shortcuts for old friends. The times where we've sort of allowed people to cut the line, it doesn't always work out. Like I say, the people that you've worked with in the past, as successful as they may have been then, that was because of the environment and the culture of that company in that time. That doesn't necessarily match your company today. And this was a hard one for me to learn, because I like to work with my friends. But at the same time, it actually was kind of freeing for me after a while. I completely removed myself from the hiring process in terms of interviewing and final decision making, and we put that down onto the teams to do the final call. And it meant that when my old friends rang me up and said, hey, is there anything happening at Mighty Kingdom? I can say, I don't do the hiring, and that's great, because then you don't have to have an awkward conversation about, sorry, I don't think you're a great fit, So, definitely make sure that you can advocate for them through the process, but make sure it goes through the process. Effectively, you adjust another reference for them at that point. But understand the frame of reference. Like, this was someone I worked with many years ago. I can see a couple of them in the room. But, but just because they were great at Chrome or at Ratbag doesn't necessarily mean they'll be great at Mighty Kingdom. Also, this doesn't stop when your employee starts. In fact, that's kind of like all this hard work that you've done to get these good candidates in. That's kind of the beginning of the journey, which is kind of crazy. This, particularly when it comes to diversity, right? You need to make sure that if you're hiring, you don't want to end up in a situation where someone feels like they were hired just because of their ethnicity, their gender, those other things. You need to make sure that the entire company is on board with this and on board with the vision, and that you're putting them in an environment where they'll succeed, not putting them in one where they're going to fail. So I think like career management and all that sort of stuff is like another whole topic. I think I might have to park that one for next year. But yeah, so let's have a look at Mighty Kingdom at 40. You notice that there's not 40 people in this photo because it's sunny and game devs don't like sun, so half of them were hiding somewhere. And what's missing from this is a lot of our graduates. We've got 8 graduates started with us this year. We ran a graduate program. And I think that the graduate program was probably the best example of our hiring process to date, where we did a lot of interviews. We took a long time to evaluate those people. We had 218 applicants for 8 positions, so it was a big slog to get through it all. But overwhelmingly, all 8 candidates have been fantastic, and they've been sort of able to jump straight in and do some amazing things at Mighty Kingdom. Yeah, it was good. It's very emotional. So let's have a look. The next step after you hire people, how do you actually keep them in your company? And this is actually probably again another great big talk, but I'll run over some quick points. If you have a vision for your company, and again I keep coming back to this because you need to just be hammering this over and over again. If you've got a vision for your company and you're communicating that effectively, people will see themselves at that company in the future. Yeah, we've had people come to us who perhaps thought of us as a stepping stone to another point in their career. There's so many people I know here that I keep looking at them that it makes me think I'm thinking about them. But once they get in, they sort of understand what we're doing and where we're going and why, and so they stuck around. This is why we've had such a high retention over the last few years. And you need to, like I said before, create an environment where people can succeed. It's one thing to have that vision, but everything that you do in your company needs to back that up. You need to make sure that your workplace policies, your leave policies, maternity leave, paternity leave, all that sort of stuff, creates a structure around your employees so that they can bring their best selves to your company and are not worried about all these other things that sort of creep into your mind. Just a quick note, I didn't put it on here, but one thing I see attract people fall into is they think that just remunerating highly is enough to retain good talent. And it's one way to hire to get people in, but oftentimes you find people basically, they take it as, there's a situation you get into where people think they're being remunerated because you're not getting other benefits. And so it needs to be a complete package. You can't just have high salaries without having all the other parts of the environment that support them. And often you'll find people hang on to a job that pays well, even if they don't want to be there because it pays well. So you just want to make sure that you've got the balance right, that you're not creating these situations where you have these unintended outcomes from your policies. And you'll notice, got to revisit and revise your plan again and again and again. As the head of a company, I mean, this is just as important when you're 2 people as when you're 40, or I should have said 4 and 40, missed my alliteration opportunity. But you need to make sure that you're constantly thinking about, is our plan still right? Are we still addressing a proper need in the market? Or do we still have, is our company actually moving closer to this? The things that we're doing meaningfully getting us there? This is the hard work, but this is what running a company is about, right? You need to constantly be reiterating this again and again and again and again and again and again. The bigger you get, the harder this gets as well, because the bigger you get, your company starts spreading in different directions, and so you need to find a vision that kind of encompasses all of that and pulls in that one direction. And certainly for us and our growth, we've been self-funded to date, which means that everything we do is bound by our cash flow. Which means sometimes you're facing a situation where you feel like you have to do something because you need to bring cash in to support the other things that you want to do. And it can be really hard to say no to an opportunity, particularly some lucrative ones. But again, it comes back to having that plan, that vision, and those values. Like, we've never done defense contracts. It's one thing that I've never sort of been interested in. I'm here to entertain people, not teach them how to kill each other. But that's my values. You have your own values, and that's fine. Like, I don't begrudge. Like, you look at Aristocrat and what they do. They're creating a career pathway for thousands of people, and that's great. But it doesn't have to be me. I don't have to do that. And so just understanding who you are and what you want to be. And we're almost at the end, actually. So much quicker than usual. One thing I will say is that how you hire is a reflection of your culture. When people apply for a job at your company, this is their first interaction with you, with your company, with your culture. Every interaction you have with that person from that moment on says something about your company, who you are, and what you value and what you don't value. So make sure that those are conscious choices you're making, that everything you do reflects the values of your company and you personally. Everything from that first email to onboarding, even for unsuccessful candidates, like making sure that you give them some good feedback to help them move forward in their career. Because quite often when you apply for a job, you just hear nothing, right? These are all opportunities for you to go out there and say, this is who we are and this is what we believe the industry should be like. So don't sort of let that fall away. It's really hard when there's 218 people who you have to get back to. But, that's one of the benefits of scale. There's lots more people who can answer those emails for you. And like I say, I think for us, the grad program hiring, I can see a few grads here. It was really great for us. Like one thing I forgot to mention earlier, one of the things we introduced late in our hiring process was testing, actually sending art tests or programming tests to our graduates. I had lent out of testing because I had a real bad experience with it when I was applying for jobs after Ratbag closed. And I thought, this is just stupid. What do they know about my ability to shift copy 2 numbers without using an intermediary and stuff like this? It seemed kind of pointless and frivolous. But what we came back to is it's not the technical part that we want to test. So what we'd do is we'd send them an art test. They'd come back, and then we'd give them feedback and notes, and then we'd see how they responded to that. And that was actually the true test of what we were looking for. It wasn't so much, are you a great artist? I mean, they were actually pretty good. But it's how are you going to respond when we have to tell you to do something that you don't want to do? Or how do you respond to feedback? And how do you take that? Do you fight it? Do you push back? Or do you take it? Do you listen? Do you understand? Do you ask interesting questions? I think with the programming test, we did a thing where we deliberately left some stuff out. to see what they would do when they discovered that it wasn't there. And what we want them to do is ask us a question, because that's actually one of the things we found really hard with new hires, is that a lot of times people would come in and they'd be quiet, and they wouldn't put their hand up, or they wouldn't say, you'd give them some work and they'd just say yes, and then eventually, you know, they'd be overloaded with work. And it's like, how do you get people to say no and feel comfortable being in that environment? So these are the sort of things we worked on a lot with our onboarding. And with our grads, we gave them all mentors within the studio. So when they came in, they had a disciplined mentor that could help them plan those first few months and get integrated into the teams, and have a person that they could go talk to. And they just gave a talk the other day about what that process was like from their perspective, which was very good. It sounded like an advertisement for Mighty Kingdom, which was perfect. But it's worked really well for us. So, but yeah, that's actually about all I got. Do you have any questions? JF.
Any thoughts on, because you work closely with schools, any thoughts on internships?
Yes, you missed my slide where I said...
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
No, internships are great, but you need to put them through the same process as if you're hiring somebody.
Yeah.
Because they're often going to be, like with Blaze, it was like 3 months or something, I think. 6 months. That's a long commitment, right? Like for someone... So we want to make sure that you're going through that same rigorous process. So the reason that we hire pretty much all of our interns is because we put them through the same testing process that we would do as if we were hiring them. And like I say, it is kind of like a try before you buy in one sense. We had one candidate, he came to us when he was 14, and he was fantastic. It was just on a work experience from school. The first week he was there, he wrote a single screen network sumo wrestling game. It was like insane, and I'm like, oh my God. He came back at 15, and we thought, man, this guy's a gun. Come back to us when you're at uni. You know, the longer you last, these kids, they grow up so fast these days. But he came to us in his first year of uni, and we tried to organise a placement for him, but his placement officer was so terrible, we just hired him. So he now works for us and does uni part-time. So yeah, universities can be great, but you know, you have to understand where they are on their journey in there. Like, you can't build your entire company around graduates, because you know, they need leadership and you need skills at all levels. But you definitely partner with universities and make sure that they're feeding you talent that's actually relevant and has skills that you need. Okay, yeah.
On the topic of internships, like, what's your top 3 tips for someone looking to get in on that end of things?
Top 3, how do we find interns? So we do a lot of outreach. We actually go and talk to universities a lot, and people sort of bubble up through that process. So if you're at university, talk to your placement officer, see what companies they're talking to, because that would be a good avenue in. Attend events, talk to people from the company that you're looking to go to. Like, read up about the company so that you know what they do and whether that's something that you want to do as well. I think as well, though, a lot of times people who are studying have an idealized version of what their career could be, and they want to go and work at a AAA somewhere, blah, blah, blah. Having been on both sides of that coin, the things we do today are fundamentally the same as when we were working on Star Wars games, right? Okay, yeah, we end up in like cute little Shopkins, which are these little kids things. But, you know, the thing that's valuable for me in the games industry isn't so much the products, it's the people that you work with. And I think the environment that you're working in is something that you should place a lot of value on. But, yeah, so my tips would be those things that I just said.
You said that you start people on fixed-term contracts. Do you still do that, or was that when you were small?
Yeah, so we currently, yes. We went from project-based to quarterly-based, and then we went down to monthly-based, and then back to quarterly-based, and then annual. So current staff are on an annual contract, but our new ones from next year are permanent. So they're all moving to permanent contracts. Yeah, it's a big moment, I tell you.
This might be a 2-part question.
Yeah.
Your the first person you started working with, the partner, that wasn't the person you hired.
No.
So,
dun, dun, dun.
How did you find that person?
So I'd worked with him before. I'll come back to you for part 2. So it was a guy called Jindo Lee. I worked with him at Ratbag, and when Ratbag closed, we kept in touch. And so as the iPhone became a thing, he was doing web dev, he wanted to get into app dev. I wanted to get out of Chrome because it was not doing so hot. And so we just started it as an app developer, and that's how we started. But we started 2 companies at the same time because, you know, hey, why not? And that other company ended up going to to the US. We moved over there, we raised some money for it, ended up shifting the entire company to the US. And so he took a whole bunch of stuff. We split the company. So I took all of Mighty Kingdom, he took all of Happy Co. So we still keep in touch. Yeah. And part two?
Look, the second part was, this is probably going to sound really predatory. But, if you're looking for someone to come and work on your game, like where I live, there's no one that does what I do. So it's finding anybody around who's available to, one, do the work, and two, do it for free, because I have no money. I'm funding myself, so
yeah.
The intern thing sounds like, oh, you just go look for, that's the predatory bit.
It's not, I mean, it sounds like it's free, but it's not free, because you have to invest a lot of time and effort, because like, I mean, everyone's different. Sometimes you get that, you'll strike gold and you find a candidate who just plugs in, but more often than not, you're going to spend a lot of time working with them, and so it costs you time, right? One of the things I often say is like the most limited resource we have as game developers isn't money or people, because you can get more of those, but it's time, because you can't get more time. So you have to be careful about what you invest your time in. And an internship, bringing someone an intern is an investment of your time. That means you're not doing something else. So you've got to make sure that the person you bring on is, you have to you have to understand that transaction, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right. You mentioned that you partner with universities. What exactly do you do? What sort of events you run for students?
So I believe a lot in like representation. Like I think that a lot of people will be attracted to the industry if they can see someone like themselves working in it. So we try and get as many people from our company to go out and talk at different events. So it's not just me all the time. We also, I have a loud American guy who works for me, and he's really good at making a lot of noise. I think Legos knows who he is. And he's really good at going and shaking them from at the sort of exec level and sort of making sure their courses are aligned and stuff like that. We're actually partnering with the UniSA, and we're going to be working with them on a new course that they're creating, where we will be doing the third year of their course at Mighty Kingdom. So they'll be coming inside and working on a project with us. So we're actually integrating very closely. Yeah, that's a brand new thing, by the way.
I was going to say, do you have any advice in regards to things like hiring managers?
Yeah, so I think the most successful managers we've had came from outside games. So they were all visual effects producers. That's probably, and it took us a while to get them out of the headspace of just beating everyone up and tying them to their desks, because like in visual effects, that's a horrible, horrible environment to work in. But they were really good at just understanding the fundamentals of like, it's just, they implicitly know that you have this limited time and that there's a budget and that sort of stuff. So they were very good. We grow a lot of talent internally, so we've sort of promoted, I guess you could call it a meritocracy. We let people sort of fall into places where they can provide the most value. So we found a lot of our team leads. So internally we have 3 teams, and at the top of each team is usually like a team lead who's almost always a product manager and a producer, so they sort of sit side by side. Tony's just come on board as our COO to help coordinate all of that stuff as we sort of grow to that next level. But yeah, so I think like people that you grow internally have a very good understanding of your culture and how you want to operate. People you bring in externally usually have a lot of skills that are transferable from other industries, and together those are like a super team that can help manage your projects. Any other questions? Oh, JF, I thought you were going to put your hand up. There we go.
Just on that note, have you found that statistically more of those people are artists or programmers or designers or people you've made it project managers?
Well, so I'll give you an example of 2 people. One of them, Ella McIntyre, she came to us to do marketing for a game that we were producing. Her market-driven approach to design was very good, so we ended up putting her in charge of the Shopkins product, and that went really well. So now she heads our original IP team. So that's how she grew up there. Another example we have is a guy called Reese Bartholomew. He's currently in Paris at Game Connection. He was supposed to be here, but he was a chef at a restaurant, and he retrained. We brought him in as an intern in his second year of his course, and now he manages all of the Shopkins products. He inherited it from Ella. So that's 9 Shopkins products. He does a lot of our fee-for-service work, so there's like 5 projects. He manages like a lot. But his skills outside of gaming, that the ability to manage a kitchen and get a whole bunch of plates out, on like, for him, like a 3-month time window is way better than a 3-minute one. So for him, it's like the stress level is quite different, right? But he's, so like I say, you should look for talent outside, and you should think about the outcome of what you're trying to achieve rather than just the name and just the title. Always sort of break down your hiring into the traits that you're looking for rather than just, it's very easy to fall into the trap of just making like an idealized version of that person in your head, and then it becomes really hard to hire because you're trying to match this very specific criteria. But if you break it down into the traits you're looking for, you can find them, you can cobble together 2 hires to make 1 hire sort of thing, and you can pick up an extra couple of skills as well. I think we're getting close to the end. That's it. So you guys can go out and hire some people now? Just no one wearing an MK shirt. They're off limits, all right? Fantastic. Yes. I know. Badged. All right, thank you.